Hi there. Did you know that March is Mental Health Awareness Month? Yep, it is. This is a subject that is of importance to all of us, and especially those of us in healthcare. We are not spared just because we are little Florence Nightingales. Everybody on the spectrum is or can be affected by mental health. Did you know that about 50 million of Americans suffer from a mental health disorder? How do you define mental health? I mean, health is a state of well being, right? In healthcare, we talk about homeostasis, which means everything is stabilized. So, in terms of mental health, it means psychologically, emotionally, that everything seems to be stabilized. Now, when anything happens or there is instability in that system, then it becomes an illness. And it becomes an illness when it keeps you from functioning, in your day to day life. If you have any kind of illness that keeps you from performing your job, it affects your relationships and it affects your social relationships, then it is an illness. And I guess you could classify an illness as to being mild, moderate, or severe, right? So out of those 50 million Americans, and we're not even talking worldwide. I didn't look at the statistics for worldwide, but we know it is worldwide. And some countries seem to have a higher incidence of suicide per se. I haven't looked into the mental health, but I know places like Japan and Korea, South Korea, there is a higher incidence of suicide. And mental health and mental illness is closely related to the way our society functions, the way family structures are created, the job situation. Is there opportunities for people to connect, or are they isolated, right? So we talked about mental health, a state of well-being, mental illness, and instability. So how prevalent and how serious a problem is this? As a society in America, we tend to be looked upon by other societies as having it all. People risk their lives to come to America to get a better life. So, of course, if you in an area, you live in a place where you have to struggle every single day, even though that is not always a risk, because I'll tell you why. I went to Africa last year and people struggle. People are poor. But despite that, people were happy. And I think it has a lot to do with the sun. There is a lot of, in places where it's usually gloomy, like in the Midwest, on the west area of the country, where it's always dreary and rainy, something to your mood. And I do hear that they have a higher incidence of suicide in those places. But in Africa, the sun shines 24/7. There is a lot of connectivity among people. There is community. There is family, strong family units and interactions. So people feel supported. So maybe, I'm sure the research is out there, and it should be. If it's not, somebody should do it. But we don't have that sense of impending doom or everything is going wrong. Do you ask yourself sometime, why in this society where we seem to have it all and we are the saddest people, we're still killing ourselves, we're still shooting ourselves, and we're still committing suicide? So it tells you that it doesn't have everything to do with financial stability or well-being. It's human beings are so complex. We're so more complex that we need more. Okay? Now, Depression and anxiety are the two most common conditions or psychiatric conditions that can be diagnosed by physicians. And the statistics say 50 million, but you know and I know that when it comes to mental illness and mental instability, people are not forthcoming. They're not running to the doctor to say, I think I'm depressed. No, because there is this sense of shame. Even though it's an illness is something that besieges you, that affects you. It got nothing to do with you. Now, of course, some things that happen to our bodies is because we don't take care of it, right? I think in mental illness, now you may have predispositions because, like a lot of other illnesses, there is genetic influence, predisposition, but certain things can predispose you to developing a mental illness. I'm not talking about schizophrenia where there is a clear genetic link, but things like also depression, because if there is depression in your family, chances are it tends to pass down to you, right? But what about how you grew up? Family interactions, whether the baby was with the parents early in the beginning, was there was bonding, or was there a lot of affection and hugs and kisses in that home? How violent was the home? Were the parents, together, or were you raised in a foster home where you felt like you weren't needed, you weren't wanted? These things are going to cascade, and you may see them manifest themselves in behaviors as you grow older in terms of depression, anxiety. I have noticed that the young people of today, the millennial, the Gen Xers, there is a higher level of anxiety in that group of kids because it's like the future is not so clear. All this technology, all this online stuff, people are just throwing things at them. They're just in information overload. Yet, there is not that much connectivity like we talked about that we see in Africa. People are isolated, and sometimes it takes a lot of energy to make those connections. That definitely is going to play. So, depression and anxiety, I wish people would not feel that, oh, I'm scared, I'm ashamed to say I'm depressed. You have the postpartum moms who just are overwhelmed with this imbalance in their hormones, where some of them feel like they don't want to take care of this baby, or they see this baby as being, a hindrance. And it can get crazy, you guys. There is something called postpartum psychosis where they just lose touch with reality. And how do you explain a mother killing their own little baby? You have to get to that realm where you're really not here with us. Okay? So we need to access help when we see those signs. 20% of young people, the statistics say, suffer with depression. In my own family, we dealt with that. So we cannot look at mental illness as this thing that maybe we did something wrong, maybe we're being punished, or maybe I didn't pray enough. Oh, don't get me started with the religious, to tell you if you don't have money, if you have diseases, illness in your body, it's because you didn't pay your tithes, or you didn't pray enough, you didn't read your Bible enough. Think about it. You have a genetic predisposition to mental illness. Your growing up years were not the best. You struggle financially. Let's say you were in a foster home and you were going from here and there. You've been sexually and physically abused. Okay? So you put all that on a child, on an individual, and then you go into a church and you have someone else speaking in your ear, just adding on to the guilt. You get married and you listen to the society telling you, oh yeah, you have to have this Coca-Cola body, otherwise you're failing. You have to be this perfect housewife. Your house People should be able to eat off the floor. Your children should be well behaved at all times. Oh, they have to do t-ball and ballet and soccer, and yeah. Plus, you have to do your full-time job and you have to excel at it. Pressure, pressure, pressure. And we wonder why people crash. I am so sorry that it took me this long to realize that the scales have fallen off my eyes on a lot of things. So I'm imploring you, if you feel like you have some of the what I call them, take inventory. Take inventory of your life. How was your life? How are your growing up years? How was your family situation? Okay? Is there any mental illness coming down your family tree? And if there is, be alert to the signs and symptoms. When you see that you're getting into the dumps, okay? If you have high blood pressure, you go to the doctor, they give you some medication. Why is it so different that now listen now, all of us experience depression at some point or another. And if you say you haven't, you're not telling the truth, okay? The difference with depression is that it stays. I think the DSM-5, which is the Bible of mental health, how we diagnose and treat mental illness, says 2 weeks. So you have to be experiencing those symptoms. They're prolonged. I'm not saying you felt tired and dumped yesterday and today you back to yourself. We'll bounce up and down like that. But if it's become debilitating, where you don't want to get out of bed, you don't want to take care of your family, there is a term called what is it? It's like, anhedonia. It's like you don't take pleasure in things that used to give you joy. So if you're a parent and you see your child, he used to play soccer, he said, oh, I'm not going to try out this year. He stays in his room all the time. He doesn't want to participate. You have to drag him to go to family vacation. It's like ding, ding, ding. You have to pay attention. And for yourself, if you start feeling like that, pay attention. Get some help. It is not your fault. It's nothing to be ashamed about. Please take that sense of shame. Now, if you have a mental illness, that usually is going to be diagnosed by a physician. The doctor will say, oh, you have major depression, okay? If you try to treat it yourself, you say, I'm going to go on a vacation, I'm going to go shopping. No, don't max out your credit cards. I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to start working out. And you do all these things and still this thing is driving you deep into that hole and it's been over 2 weeks. It's time to go get help. It's time to go get help. There is usually an imbalance in the hormones in your brain that you need, some serotonin to just kind of normalize things up there. There is no shame in taking a little pill. And those first-line medication, we call them the SSRIs. It takes like 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes 8 weeks for you to get the full effect. So don't take a pill and think it's a magic pill that after 2 weeks you're like, oh, it doesn't work, so I'm not going to take it anymore. Don't do that. Please don't do that. And keep seeing your doctor and so he or she can assess your progress. There is no shame in taking medication. You take medication for diabetes, you take it for high blood pressure, you take it for heart failure, take your medication. Now, some psychiatric illnesses like schizophrenia, where people are hearing voices and they just can't function. Do you know when you start having mental illness, then chances are you're going to have some other things going on. People with these illnesses tend to smoke a lot. A lot of them abuse drugs that they're not supposed to take, like opioids. And then the medication that we give you to treat those illnesses have their own sets of problems in terms of cardiac irregularities. They make you gain weight. Some of them reduce your sex drive. So yes, educate yourself. And if your doctor knows that these things are happening, they can adjust your medication. That is not a reason for you not to be treated. Okay? So let's talk about suicide for a moment. We all know what's happening in this country. We hear about those heartbreaking news every single day. Most recently, one on a judge, right? If you have a chronic illness, you are at risk of developing depression, anxiety, a mood disorder. You can't sleep, you can't function, and that's where you need some medication. And usually with those kind of illnesses, you need therapy as well. Okay? We call those behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. You need that with the medication. Don't go sit in somebody's chair for like 2 minutes, 20 minutes and say, didn't do anything. No, it takes time to pull all these things out from your childhood, for example, and talk about your coping mechanisms and how you see the world. A good therapist is going to help you shift your thinking to focus on the right thing so you can veer your ship and then go in a more positive direction. It takes work. And it saddens me that sometimes people get to a point they say they've tried a medication and it happens. I have this long COVID group on Facebook, and I will tell you, we had trouble with mental illness before. COVID has just added a whole different level of mental illness. And with these folks, what this virus has done is just the inflammation has just totally destroyed their brain. So they're acting like they have dementia. People, the brain fog, they call about it, they just can't focus. People have lost their jobs. Imagine I had COVID in 2020 in October, and I'm not 100%. But mentally, I think I'm okay. Thank God. Some people are not as lucky, right? So imagine if you had COVID in March 2020, now it's May 2022, and you're still suffering. So people who have chronic, debilitated physical illnesses are at risk for depression, anxiety, and suicide. The other group, the youth, when kids, their brains are developing and they have all this stuff happen to them and they had that predisposition in their brain, if they don't go get help and get therapy to help pull them out of that deep hole, because that's what depression feels like. I was in a hole once. I remember exactly how my thought process was. It's like you feel like you've gotten so deep and nobody can pull you out. Nothing that somebody said. You just can't see any light out. That is a tough place to be, you guys. And yes, your faith can help you, but you also need professional help. Okay? So when it comes to suicide, you had a chronic illness, you have a family history, you had all kinds of things happen to you as you were growing up. You're in a stressful environment, your job, your family, maybe you being abused by your spouse or partner. Whew, that is a lot to deal with. So you have children being depressed now, right? Because depending on what's going on in the home front. Teenagers, middle schoolers, this is a really tough time for kids when they're in middle school. The kids being bullied, they're all killing themselves too, little 9-year-olds. Oh my God. Yes. 9-year-old little kids hanging themselves because they just can't take the pain. It just breaks me. So middle school, teenagers, high schoolers, kids in college where it's supposed to be living their best life. But if you're in that hole, you can't enjoy what's around you. You cannot. You have young couples that are just so focused on success by the world standard, working 2 jobs. I got to go get my PhD. I have to do the best at my job. I have this boss I'm working with who is, a bear. People at work are just stressing you. Then you come home, you stressed out. That's the recipe for disaster. You get to be middle-aged. No, how about the mom? We talked about the moms, postpartum with these kids, the hormone shift and imbalance. They're just totally going bonkers. And some of them have no help. And some, even if they have help, they may have a husband who is very supportive, but because of that chemical imbalance, they're not able to see it. They can't process it, right? So you go to middle age, people are going to menopause, depression, mood swings. Maybe you have a spouse, somebody cheated on somebody, right? You bring all that up. Stress, folks, stress. Now we get to the very old at the end of life. Well, I'm getting close to that. It's not a pretty picture when you're looking down to see what does the future hold? What's going to happen? And if you're a medical person, you see it every day. I go to this nursing home and I see those used to be vibrant people sitting somewhere, drooling. Somebody has to wipe their behind. It's tough. And by that time, you have multiple illnesses, cancers. You can't walk. You can't do this. Dementia. They are at risks. They are at risk to kill themselves. And sometimes we've had murder-suicides, where two old people who are debilitated, they are sick, and they just don't see a way out. But I am here, having painted this awful picture. This is Mental Health Awareness Month. If you don't get anything for what I just said, understand that an illness is that. It's an illness. It's something that is gone wrong in your body, in your brain, and it just needs to be readjusted. It's not anything that you did wrong. You don't deserve it. You didn't do anything to cause it. Get rid of the guilt that whoever it is putting on you, and just to get thee behind me, Satan. Brush it off and go do something for yourself. Go to the doctor. Get your medication. Change your way of life. Find ways to reduce your stress if you can. Change your priorities, okay? Having two Bentleys in your garage and a Tesla, and living in this big old house that you can afford, not being able to do anything, just living life on credit, it is not worth it. That is stress. Stress, stress. And I go back to the serenity prayer. Do change what you can. Realize what you can't and let it go. Ask God to give you wisdom to know the difference between what you can change and what you cannot. Be aware of your mental health. Be conscious of your own body and what is going on. Stop ignoring the symptoms. Your body will always tell you. You always have warning signs. That body is going to, you have a fever, your heart rate goes crazy. That's because it's trying to compensate. Mental illness, if you feel like you're in that deep hole that you're just sinking in, reach for help. Put your hand up and reach for help. Reach for help. So now I want to talk to my nurse friends, because hopefully I'm posting this on the Nurse Training and Advocacy. You are a human being just like everybody I just spoke about, okay? You have your own set of challenges of genetics, family, stress outside in your family, your mate, your home situation, aging parents, misbehaving kids, teenagers, it all coming at you. And then you have a job where you super stress. Take inventory and just put everything and say, okay, what is most important to me? What can I do to reduce my stress? Because my job is to keep you from burning out. Burnout doesn't just come on one day. Burnout is something that has been building and building and building, and you've just ignored it. I'm not saying you've chosen to ignore it. But it could be that you have never taken the time to sit down and say, okay, let me take inventory. What do those constant headaches tell me? Why do I feel so weighted down all the time? Why am I putting on so much weight? Why can't I sleep? I read somewhere where this nurse was coming to work on 3 to 11 shift, and after she got report and realized she was going to work short yet again, and she had all these responsibilities, people's lives in your hand. Talk about stress. That is stress. She said she had to go into the bathroom. She was hyperventilating and she was having a panic attack. Now, if I'm doing a job and I go on and I'm having a panic attack, I need to sit down and say, what am I doing to myself? Okay? You don't have to do a job where you stress every single day. You need to find a way to work with whoever is your boss to kind of make some changes. Or it could be time for you to do something else. It's okay. You're not a failure if you say, I can't take it anymore. And I think I'm happy to see that nurses are beginning to kind of wake up and say, we cannot work under these circumstances. Well, I'm not saying they're jumping ship, but they're making changes, which is perfectly fine, because your life, your health, your mental health is more important. Because if you're stressed out, you're going to have depression, you're going to be needing medication, you're going to start smoking. Sometimes you can start dabbling in things that you're not supposed to be dabbling into. You may be putting weight, then your blood pressure goes up, you develop diabetes. Listen, it's a cascade. Don't get on that train. Do something. Take care of yourself. Recognize what is stressing you and cut some of it off. The kids don't have to be doing 3 different sports. You shouldn't have to be running like a chicken with your head cut off. That is stress. Reduce that stress. Protect your mental health, just like you would protect your body. Be strong. Be bold. Okay? And I'm here if you need anything. So, all May, you can think about mental health. This is Mental Health Awareness Month. So, I've done this little chit chat with you just to help you to think through things, because sometimes if somebody brings it up, maybe you're like, oh, maybe. Doesn't mean you weren't aware of it, but it's just like you in a moment where you pay attention, right? Okay. So I pray that you will take care of yourself, that you will realize that no one's going to do it for you but you. Okay? So take care of yourself. There is no way you can take care of anybody else until you learn to take care of yourself first. There's nothing wrong with that. If that means being selfish, so be it. So be it. Take care of it now so you're not going to be sorry later. Okay? I love you. God loves you. Au revoir. À la prochaine. Bye. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Share this video. I know you have friends and family who need to hear this. And also click the notification bell. Okay? I'm going to be posting a lot more now. So look out. Watch out. All right, guys. Bye.